We're talking summer safety. Well, it hasn't really officially started yet. A lot of people setting up their cottages. We have a lot of people going to and from. You got the boats out, people out on the lake. And so this is the perfect time to answer some of those questions. So great to have Brenda Hollingsworth, Richard Auger, as always. A pleasure. We're going to start with you because the one thing that is a major aspect of, especially being out on the water, is the boats. For the owner, for the safety, and what happens, the responsibility around it.
Yes, that's right. It is an important area. People buy cottages, and often with the purchase of a cottage, there'll be a boat included from the previous owner. So, you know, we always tell clients that a starting point is to make sure you get your own insurance. Don't assume that just because the boat came with the cottage you purchased that you're covered. So you want to make sure that you call your own broker and make sure that you have your own insurance in place for that boat. And a couple of other sort of obvious practical points that we tell clients is once you have the insurance in place, you want to at the same time make sure you have your pleasure craft operator's card. It's a requirement under the law in Ontario, and you can be fined if you don't have it. It can also have implications on your insurance coverage, and that course not only for those reasons is good, it's important also just for basic safety rules and regulations on the water, and it's a whole area of the law that there are different rules on the water obviously and certain laws that every operator must follow.
It has to be, you have to come to terms with if you aren't insured, if you don't have these qualifications, and we've done a lot of stories already on the show about getting those qualifications and getting certified, you could be looking at horrible circumstances later on if you didn't have those things.
Yeah.
And God forbid there was an accident.
Well, that's right. There's obviously that's a whole area of personal injury law itself, and there's sort of two categories. And one is even if there is insurance, there is legislation that limits that to $1 million. So you could have 3 people in a boat that are seriously injured and be faced with the situation of only $1 million available. Now, there can be an argument made that if it's reckless driving or even criminal driving, that you might be able to get a claim above that $1 million. So you want to speak to a lawyer to see where you fit within that if you've been injured in a boating accident. And sort of the other category is criminal law. I've been involved in criminal cases where there have been boating accidents, and many people don't realize that the laws that apply to driving a motor vehicle, impaired driving, failing to stop at an accident scene, those laws apply to boating as well. And there are other ones as well that can have the same criminal consequences of fine and even jail.
I have been in a boat. I've never driven a boat because I don't have my certification, but it's not like you're sitting down and you have the seatbelt rule that you're not starting the car, you're not starting the boat until everyone's got their seatbelt on. So how does that work for the people that are also passengers within the craft?
Well, that's a good point. And that's another reason that the law is so strict for boating is you don't have the airbags and you don't have seatbelts, as you say, and the operator can be charged for not having the appropriate safety devices, personal flotation devices, and other items in the vehicle that are required by the legislation, flashlights, safety tow ropes. There's other items that are set out in that safety course that everyone's required to take that you must have in the boat, and fines can occur if you don't have it.
Okay, we're talking right now, we've been talking power boats, but other things still. We have canoes, you have kayaks, there's a lot of things that can happen around the cottage, and we want to be able to get more information your way. We do have to take a break. Right now we are really focused on what's happening this summer as cottages are opening up, people are out on the waterways, we've been talking about boat safety, and the one thing that you also want to kind of stress on that is people are out because it's recreational boating, but they've got water skis, they've got tubing, there's a lot of other things that are involved with it.
Well, that's a good point. So it's not just the boat itself, and it's not just personal injury and suing and recovering, there's also the force of the criminal law. So to your point, if a boat operator is towing someone on water skis or in a tube and there's no person on the boat watching, that can be a criminal offense.
There's not a spotter.
Yeah.
There's no, right? Usually there's a spotter.
Spotter
Yeah.
can be a criminal offense. It's a summary conviction offense, and that has a maximum of 6 months jail and or $5,000 fine. Another one that people aren't familiar with as a general rule is if you're towing a person on a tube or water skis an hour after dark to sunrise, same offense, criminal offense under the criminal code. So there's a whole area that people have to think about and turn their minds to in terms of not only safety for their own well-being, but also to avoid punishment.
This is by law.
By criminal law, under the
you
criminal
don't have
code.
you're not out water skiing.
Right, it's not just a common sense safety. It's by criminal law and by personal injury law.
Okay. So these are really interesting things to think about. So we've got the boat, and we're talking about all the recreational factors that go into this. A lot of people are like, oh, if we're going up to the cottage, we're going to work on the deck, we're going to build the dock. This is something that can't just be like that the rules don't apply here.
Yeah, it's amazing. People who would never build something at their home feel very competent putting up structures and making decks and all kinds of platforms at cottages. Cottages do have building codes. Whatever municipality or whatever province your cottage is in does have a building code. It does apply. Permits are usually required. So, you know, lots of people pretend that doesn't exist. And maybe that's fine. But if someone gets hurt and you haven't gone through the required steps, what you would do at your home, you know, you're going to be liable. So number one, make sure you have enough liability insurance on your cottage. We all know that we have to have liability insurance at home, but have it at your cottage too. Lots can go wrong. I've had lots of cases where people have suffered broken limbs, arms and legs at cottages because maybe there was no railing around the deck and someone stepped down into a hole, or they tripped and fell on a walk that wasn't properly level. A lot of problems at cottages at night with lighting. Everybody's going to go down to the dock, but there's no lighting from the cottage that is way up on the top of the hill down to the dock. So all of those things, just because you're in the country, just because it's a rural setting, they still apply. And if you're the cottage owner and you have a guest who's injured, you're going to be on the hook for that. And even more importantly is if you rent your cottage out. It's really, really important to pay attention to conditions there.
Well, the thing is, though, is it's your cottage. You know everything. You know that there's a weak patio stone.
That's exactly
there.
right.
Like, you know that step kind of curves a little bit. You know your property, so for you, you know, it's kind of become a family joke. Oh, watch for the loose pebble there. But when people are renting it, they're not aware of these, and these are things that you're going to be held liable for.
Right. And I had one case actually that was very interesting where the cottage owner kept a log of all of the repairs that he did and all of the inspections that he did. And, you know, that was quite impressive. He was still liable, but it was quite impressive that he did that. And I would recommend that if you are going to be renting out your cottage any season, that you do regular inspections. Like, make sure the outdoor lights work. Like, that's a basic thing. The burned out light could, many accidents both in the city and the country happen because people can't see where they're walking. So what inspections do? You have a nice little binder that, you know, with a check sheet. I'm sure there's check sheets online. And, you know, be able to show some due diligence makes a big difference.
People have just come back from the cottage this weekend, and they're going to be turning right back and going back up to be able to check some of those things. And it's really important information that you need to have and to consider. So we have one more segment coming your way. Welcome back to CTV Morning Live. We continue with our last segment. We're for Ask the Expert with Richard Auger and Brenda Hollingsworth. Sorry, we've been chatting and kind of like, okay, into summer mode, and we're getting through things. So the one thing we've really covered is we're having all this fun over at the cottage. We're on the water. We're kind of hanging out on the decks. A lot of the times, though, alcohol is usually a factor in this. People are going to the cottage. They tend to drink a little bit more. They feel a little bit freer than they do in the city.
Right, and believe it or not, the effects of alcohol are the same if you're at the cottage as they are at home.
Or even worse with sunlight and fresh air and long days and exercise.
And people don't seem to mind starting at 11 a.m. Where they might have waited till after dinner in the city. So, I mean, most cottages are surrounded by water, and if you have children and water and boats and all of that, somebody has to be the sort of designated lifeguard. And the person who is watching the kids, driving the boat, supervising, really needs to make sure that they are quite limited in their alcohol consumption. It is a scary reality of the number of people who are, you know, sort of half in the bag by 4 o'clock in the afternoon with a cottage full of children. So what we say, and this is true for pools at home too, is always make sure that there is one person who knows that they're in charge of supervising the swimmers. And in the past we've recommended that there be sort of a physical object that you hold, or wear around your neck, or a hat or something.
It's almost like passing the torch. It's that
Exactly.
someone knows that they're right now on the pool duty, because you could have so many people around, but everyone's
Yeah.
kind of conversing and talking, and they
Exactly.
figure someone else is kind of looking in on the water. So having that, and then if you need to, it gets passed off.
That's right. You have to go to the washroom, you want to go change your clothes, you hand it to someone, and you go and you come back. And it's just so that literally everybody knows who's in charge. And if you are in charge, you should be relatively sober.
Same thing
It's very
apply-
important.
Absolutely, and the same thing applies either with people driving to and from the cottages, and then also using some of those the motorboats and stuff with the same applications of drinking and driving.
Absolutely. It's, you know, as Brenda said, people assume that it's sort of being at the cottage is a world on its own, and, you know, there's no police on the lake. It's a small lake, so if I have, you know, 8 beer in the boat, no, the police aren't going to catch me. Well, the criminal laws still apply, impaired driving applies, dangerous driving on a boat applies, and the reality is the police don't have to be there to catch you with the beer in your hand driving the boat impaired. There are other people on the lake that can be witnesses that saw you in the boat, that saw you driving the boat in a dangerous manner, and that saw you exhibiting signs of impairment, and that can be evidence against you while you're operating the boat, just as though you're operating a car impaired.
There's a lot of great information. There's a lot of this too. This is for your own safety. This is so that you can get the most out of your summer and enjoy being away and enjoy having that experience at the cottage. But things to really consider, and of course it all comes back to having that insurance as a homeowner, especially not only with what you have at home, but having those same rules apply to what you're doing at your cottages.
Absolutely.